Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. And today I want to talk about judgment and judging other people. That's something that I did a lot of before I came into recovery, and even since I've been in recovery, it's something that I've struggled with. And it's part of, I think, human nature in a lot of ways. One of the problems is that judging other people in terms of looking at them and seeing them doing things we don't want to do ourselves, or things that we don't think that they should be doing, is sometimes a good intellectual exercise. That's a good way to figure out the way that we want to live our lives, and it's also sometimes a good way to figure out how we can best help others. The problem happens when we mix that intellectual exercise up with emotions, and when we start using the judgment of other people to build ourselves up by tearing them down. So I'm going to read a little bit about that from A New Pair of Glasses by Chuck C. and see what he says about it. So he says, "We're all God's kids, and every one of us is doing the best we can according to our understanding of life. People don't do what they do because they want to, but because they have to. Just as I drank and you drank against our own will, we have to come to see that the obsessions of the mind, whoever has them, are greater than willpower. When the will and the imagination and or the emotions are in conflict, the emotions and the imagination always win. We drank against our own will, and so people don't do what they do because they want to, but because they have to. The man never lived that disliked me enough to have to tear me down. The only reason that anybody tries to tear me down is to build himself up. And when we come to see this, people can't hurt us. There's no way they can hurt us." So a lot of my life has been spent in judgment of other people. And this also goes into comparing myself to other people. And a lot of my difficulties in life have come from my obsession with comparing myself to others. Not only in terms of seeing things that I'm doing that I think are better than other people, but also seeing things other people are doing that I feel like I'm less than for not doing myself. And so we've got to get away from this kind of judgment where our emotions get tied up into it, and look to judgment as something that's an intellectual tool that we can use to make solid decisions in our lives. For example, if I've got a friend who's really successful in business, has started his own business, has sold that business, and is doing really well for himself and his family, I can look at that with envy, and I can look at that with jealousy, and I can look down on myself for not being more like that person. Or I could respect what he's done and go and ask him questions out of curiosity about how he achieved that success, and then figure out which of his answers might be applicable in my own life, apply them as they work, and then move on from there and see what happens. In both cases, I'm doing a little bit of comparison of myself to someone else, and I'm judging that person, but one, I'm getting emotionally caught up in it and getting going a negative route with those emotions. And in the other, I'm just taking a more intellectual view of, hey, I respect this person, I admire what they're doing, and I want to see if anything they're doing might work in my life as well. And I would argue that those two paths are a difference between selfishness, when I compare myself to others in envy, or in when I start to think down on myself, or when I start to resent somebody for their success. That's selfishness. And when I look to other people as inspirational, and when I start becoming curious about what they're doing that makes them successful, I'd argue that's love. That's love and compassion coming through. And what we need to do in recovery is really look toward the path of love and compassion, and try to identify how we can exhibit that kind of emotion, not only with people who have done inspiring things that we might want to aspire to ourselves, but also to the people who are having trouble in life. So for the person who is having a difficult time with recovery, it's easy to look down on that person and to build yourself up by saying, that person is getting it wrong, I'm getting it right, good for me. That's the easy route to take, but that's also the selfish route. That's the self-centered route. The loving, compassionate route is to reach out to that person, let them know that you're there. Not to tell them that you know better than they do, but to tell them that you're there to support them and to help them. So whenever we're looking at anything in judgment, it's human nature to compare ourselves to others and to judge other people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the way in which we do it that makes a difference. And if we choose a path of love and compassion in the way that we compare ourselves to other people, in the way that we judge other people, and in the way that we then follow up on those feelings, then that's going to get us to a good place. If we choose a path of self-centeredness, where we are condescending or resentful and caught up in those kinds of emotions, that leads to a situation where we don't benefit from this intellectual tool that we have. And that can cause problems in our recovery, even bad enough that we could eventually go back to drinking or using. So that's it for today. Hope you have a great day today, and I'll be back here tomorrow with more.